There's a specific kind of silence you only find on the long, empty stretches of the Arizona highway after midnight. It's a heavy, suffocating silence that feels like it's watching you. Most people drive a little faster, gripping the steering wheel a bit tighter, just hoping to see the glow of a gas station. But for the Miller family, that glow would become their worst nightmare. It was 11:45 p.m. Inside their silver SUV, the atmosphere was the complete opposite of the darkness outside. Mark was humming along to a radio track, his eyes tired but focused. Sarah was in the passenger seat, scrolling through photos of their trip, while 4-year-old Lily was fast asleep in the back, clutching her teddy bear. In the car seat next to her, little Toby was finally quiet. They were the picture-perfect American family, safe, happy, totally unaware that they had just crossed a line into a place where reality starts to fray at the edges. Suddenly, a violent shudder ripped through the vehicle. A rhythmic, metallic clanking started under the hood. Clack, 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 followed by a thick plume of gray vapor that hissed against the windshield. Mark cursed under his breath, pulling the dead machine to the gravel shoulder. As he stepped out, the desert air hit him. It wasn't warm, it was unnervingly cold. He popped the hood, and the vapor swirled around him like ghostly fingers. The engine was bone dry, yet it felt like it was vibrating with a life of its own. "Mark, what is it?" Sarah's voice echoed too loudly in the stillness. Mark looked at his phone. No service, just a glowing screen that felt useless in the face of the vast black horizon. They sat there for an hour, the car's interior light feeling like a tiny, fragile bubble in an ocean of ink. The silence of the desert began to feel intentional, like it was waiting for them to realize they were trapped. That's when Sarah saw it, a flickering, sickly green neon sign about a half-mile ahead, barely visible through the haze. The Silent Rest Hotel. Vacancy. They had no choice. Mark grabbed the heavy flashlight, Sarah took the baby bag, and they began the long walk. Every step on that gravel sounded like a bone snapping. They reached the building, and it looked wrong. The wood was gray and weathered, like it had been standing there since the dawn of time. As they pushed through the heavy oak doors, a bell chimed, a sharp, piercing sound that didn't seem to fade. It just hummed in their ears. The lobby smelled of old dust and something sweet, like decaying lilies. An elderly woman sat behind the mahogany desk. She didn't look up as they approached. Her skin was so thin you could see the blue veins pulsing underneath like tiny, restless snakes. "The Millers," she whispered, though they hadn't given their names. "We've been keeping the lights low for you." She slid a heavy brass key across the counter. Room 404. As they walked down the long corridor, the atmosphere shifted. The wall lamps were flickering in a strange rhythm, casting long, distorted shadows. But as Mark shined his flashlight, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Their shadows weren't following them. When Lily ran ahead, her shadow stayed behind for a full second, peeling itself off the wall with a sticky, tearing sound before catching up. Sarah noticed it too. She gripped Mark's arm so hard her knuckles turned white. They weren't just in a hotel. They were inside something that was learning how to mimic them. Inside room 404, the air was stagnant. Mark pushed a heavy wooden dresser against the door. He told himself it was just for safety, but the look in his eyes said he was terrified. Toby wouldn't stop staring at the corner of the ceiling, his little eyes following something invisible. Mark went to the bathroom to wash the grease off his hands. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to stop the shaking. But when he looked into the old silver-backed mirror, his heart stopped. The reflection wasn't splashing water. The mirror Mark was standing perfectly still, dripping wet, staring at the real Mark with a cold, predatory hunger. The reflection didn't move when Mark moved. It just slowly raised a finger to its lips, signaling for silence. Mark backed out of the bathroom, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Sarah, we have to go, now!" But when they turned to the door, the dresser was gone. In its place was a solid, seamless wall of floral wallpaper. They turned to the window, but instead of the desert, the window showed the same hallway they had just walked through. They were trapped in a loop, a folding dimension where every exit led to the beginning. Lily started to cry, a sound that seemed to vibrate very walls. Mark grabbed the baby monitor. The audio coming through wasn't crying, it was a low, raspy breathing. And then a whisper, a voice that sounded exactly like Mark's, but hollow. "Don't be scared, Lily. The shadows are just hungry." The wallpaper began to ripple. Dark hand-like shapes began to push through the floral pattern, stretching the paper like thin skin. The hotel was no longer hiding its nature. It was a predator, and they were the meal. Mark saw a single drop of his own blood on the carpet from a cut he'd gotten earlier. It was the only thing in the room that was real. It was the only thing that had a shadow. "Follow the blood!" Mark yelled. They sprinted toward it. As they ran, the hallway began to stretch like a rubber band. The Shadow Man, a tall, faceless entity in a tattered shroud, emerged from the ceiling, reaching down with elongated fingers. Sarah swung her bag, the metal buckle catching the entity's arm. There was no blood, only a sound like dry autumn leaves being crushed. The creature shrieked, a sound that bypassed their ears and vibrated straight into their bones. They didn't find the door, they found a tear in reality. Mark shoved his family through the darkness, feeling a cold, icy grip on his ankle. He kicked back with everything he had and tumbled out onto the hard, dry gravel of the Arizona desert. The sun was just beginning to break the horizon, turning the sky a bruised purple. The hotel was gone. In its place sat the charred ruins of a building that had burned down in the 1970s. Their SUV was sitting exactly where they had left it. They scrambled into the car, Mark turned the key, and the engine roared to life as if nothing had ever happened. They drove for 3 hours without a single word. They're home now. Life has gone back to normal. But sometimes Sarah notices things, like how the house feels a little too quiet, or how Lily refuses to play with her dolls because she says they talk too much at night. But the real horror happened yesterday. Mark was standing in the garden, playing with the dog under the bright midday sun. Sarah was watching from the window. The dog had a shadow. The trees had shadows. The house had a shadow. But Mark was standing in the middle of the lawn, and the grass beneath his feet was perfectly, unnervingly bright. He didn't have a shadow. And as he turned to look at her through the window, Sarah saw his reflection in the glass. The reflection wasn't looking at Mark, it was looking at her, and it was holding a brass key with the number 404 etched in the metal. They didn't escape the hotel, they just brought the vacancy home. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to hit like, subscribe for more nightmares, and tell me in the comments your opinion.